how to become rich. I know it sounds like a cliche, but I want to talk about the big three expenses and how solving those can help you become rich. I want to start with a story you might have heard me tell before. One of my mentors named Louis, is also known as Dr. Stone, was a teacher at Clemson University. I took a class from him, and early in my kind of relationship with him, he told me this story. He said, "Hey, Chad, you're 22 years old. Do you want to learn how to become rich?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to learn how to become rich." He's like, "I'm going to tell you a story that a very wealthy person told me when I was about your age." And he was working in a factory in North Carolina somewhere. And this owner of the factory told him this. He said, "Hey, Louis, you want to become rich?" He said, "Yeah, same thing." And he said, "Well, here's how you do it. Louis, you got to learn how to live on $30,000 per year and make $30,000 per year." Got it, Louis? Yeah, got it. Okay. So next, Louis, you got to learn how to make $60,000 per year and still live off $30,000 per year. Got it, Louis? Yeah, got it. Okay. So then you have to learn how to make $120,000 per year, but still live off $30,000 per year. Got it, Louis? Louis is like, "Yeah, I got it." He's like, "If you can do that, Louis, you can't help but become rich." So that's really the foundation of what I want to talk about here is the gap between what you spend and what you earn is what inevitably leads you to becoming rich. Now, easier said than done, right? Cost of living goes up. Things are expensive. We even have inflation right now. But the general principle is if you can create that gap, then you can save money. And if you can save money, you can invest that money into real estate investing, kind of what this channel is all about, what I like, but in whatever you choose to invest it in. But the rubber meets the road. It's like, well, how do you actually do that? Like, things are expensive. And so I wanted to share something I learned. I don't remember where I learned it along the way about the big three expenses. These are basically over 60% of the average US budget is spent on these three things: housing, transportation, and food. And so when I first started my career, when I was trying to save money and I was trying to follow Louis' advice to try to get my expenses down, and really the goal is to have like a savings rate of maybe 20%, 30%, 50% or more. And you can't do that unless you work on these three big expenses. So the first one is housing. And we're in the real estate business, so we talk a lot about housing. But the average person in the US spends 33%, or not say person, the household spends 33% of their budget, which I think is about $25,000 per year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics that I have looked up. And so a third of your housing, sometimes this is more for people in high cost of living areas. This is on average among everybody in the United States. So 33%, if you can cut that down, big deal. Now, how do you do that? For me, one of my favorite strategies has been house hacking. House hacking is a way to live in a property that you also rent out part of the property. This isn't a new strategy. People have been doing this for years, but if you can live in a house and rent out 2 extra bedrooms, maybe like to midterm rentals, people who are just kind of traveling, only need a place for a few months. Maybe you do Airbnb. Maybe you have a duplex and you live on one side of the duplex, rent the other side of the duplex. Maybe you have a house and you live in the basement and you rent out the upstairs, and you have a separate ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, and you either live in the ADU and rent out the house or live in the house and rent out the ADU. Lots of options there, but house hacking is a really cool way to get into a property with a smaller down payment because you live there, and then to use the rent from extra people, either to cover part of your expenses or maybe even cover all the expenses. I've been able to hack it where I've been able to live for free by living in a place like that. That's my biggest recommendation. But the other recommendation is just keeping your housing simpler. You know, we're in a place where housing in 2025 is sort of unaffordable, or very unaffordable for many people. But by living in simpler housing, often the average house is very big. You know, things have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, new construction. Try to find the simpler house, the one that would work as a rental later on if you had to keep it, and keep that housing expense down. If you can cut that budget by half or even maybe all of it, then you'll be a long way towards being able to save more money to become wealthy. The second of the big three expenses is transportation. So it's the 17% of the average budget, so not quite as big as housing, but still a significant amount. And I was looking up some other statistics that the cost of owning a car, and this varies depending on what you spend it on, what kind of car you have, but it's about $12,000 per year per car. That includes all of the costs like buying the car, financing costs, license, registration, gas, things like that. But $12,000 per year per car. So if you have two cars in the household and you don't work on getting that budget down, you could be spending a lot of money, a lot more than the average. So how do you do this? The way I was able to approach this early in my career was buying used cars first and foremost. Now, not just buying any old used car, try to buy a reliable used car. I'm a big fan of Toyotas. I think they have a really good quality recommendation and last for a long time. If you can figure out how to do your own maintenance. I'm not a real big maintenance person myself. I pay for getting my car maintenance done, but you can cut that average number of 12,000 per year. I've seen a lot of my friends and people I know down to 2,000, 4,000, 5,000 a year. So you can definitely cut that by maybe half or even down to a quarter of the average if you're really thoughtful about the kind of car you drive, or maybe even you don't need a car at all. Like maybe you can spend a little bit more on housing and live closer. Maybe you and a partner or a spouse, one of you could walk or bike to work and the other person could take a car, or maybe you could both use public transportation if that's available in your area. If you can get creative with transportation and housing, you can cut a big chunk, almost half of your budget or over half of your budget going to that. The third one is food. And so 13% of people's average budget goes to food, or about $10,000 per year. I love eating out. And so this is one of those where, I appreciate the fact that quality food, healthy food is a good investment over the long run. But if you're in the stage of growth, and this is kind of a cyclical thing, you're really trying to save money, doing things like eating at home, making your own lunch when you go to work, not always eating out, and just being reasonable, like eat out every once in a while, but make it kind of a special thing that you do here and there. And as things get better and as you invest and you have income coming in, there'll be time for that. But there's a season for everything. And when you're in the season of saving, trying to be more frugal with your budget and still enjoy yourself. Like you can still take picnics, go out in the park, go to a nice place with your homemade sandwich instead of going out to a fancy restaurant. It can mean difference of thousands of dollars in your budget. So just some things to think about. This isn't directly related to real estate investing, but it's the foundation of investing in real estate is being able to save money, being able to get wealthy, like Louis learned and like the story he told me, is a matter of your savings rate, the gap between what you spend and what you earn. And if you just earn more and more and more money, but you always increase the spending, you have that lifestyle creep that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you'll never become wealthy. You'll have a lot of income, but you won't have the investment to actually become financially free and have investments that pay you income instead of the other way around. Now, I think one of the hardest things about cutting your expenses, about living frugally, saving money, is the psychology of it, is it doesn't feel like it's fun. But have you ever heard of that old saying that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with? So if you wanted to save money, if the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with are also saving money, you're likely to save money. Or if you're trying to go, be fit or be on a diet, the average of the 5 people you spend time with is probably how you'll behave too. The point is, the people you spend the most time around, your community, your chosen community, your friend group, can make a big difference in the decisions you make, and the healthy decisions or the financially wealthy decisions. And so I've been working on something called Rental Property Mastery, which is a private community just for small and mighty real estate investors who are looking to achieve things like we talked about in this episode, to achieve financial freedom, to make the hard decisions that are also often best in the end. But having a group of people who are on the same journey you are makes a big difference. So RPM for short is the name of this community. And I teach people, I coach people. We also have all my education products there. But most of all, we have a community of this maxed out at 300 people. So it's a small and mighty community. It's online. We also have some in-person events we've been working on that are a lot of fun. But it's all real estate investors looking to achieve financial freedom, helping each other out. And I'm in there too. This is where I spend a ton of my time. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out at coachcarson.com/RPM. And you can see all the details, see what it's all about. I will say there's an application process for this. So it's mainly targeted towards intermediate to advanced real estate investors, meaning you've already got a property or two under your belt. We love beginner investors, but we had to choose kind of where this community is oriented. So a lot of conversations are among people who've already got properties, figuring out how to manage them, how to improve them, how to master the systems, how to work on financing, acquiring more properties. So if that's you and you think you might be a good fit, check it out, coachcarson.com/RPM. And I'd love to see you inside the community.